Just 12 men, all of them American, have walked on the moon. The Apollo astronauts helped America win the space race. What they brought back has fueled an artifact race ever since. After his death earlier this year, we learned that Neil Armstrong kept a stash of Apollo 11 souvenirs, including a movie camera hidden in a closet. The first man on the moon didn't sell his space trinkets, but other astronauts and their families have tried to, which America Tonight's Adam May found has led to some earthly interventions.
3, 2, 1. We have a liftoff. Liftoff on Apollo.
Apollo astronauts.
The Eagle has landed.
They won the space race, beating the Soviets to the moon, and captivated the world. They were heroes with the right stuff, bringing home moon rock and mementos, souvenirs of their historic journeys.
Sold $37,500.
Nearly half a century later, space artifacts and memorabilia from the Apollo missions are worth a small fortune,
$14 now.
with some items selling for tens, even hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Last call. That's going on the phone. Sold $50,000.
Robert Perlman is the founder and editor of CollectSpace.com.
What's the pecking order? What's most valuable?
So if you were to have a pecking order, things that flew to the moon are on that top level. Now, then you get even more distinguished by the fact of, well, did it go to the moon and just orbit the moon? Or did it go to the moon and land on the moon? And if it landed on the moon, was it taken out of the lunar lander and then brought out onto the surface?
Is that the most valuable space memorabilia?
That is the most valuable, and there's one little tiny distinction that makes it even more valuable, and that is, was it stained with moon dust? One of the checklists that was on their wrist, called cuff checklist, they could flip the pages and see what they were doing while they were outside the spacecraft. You can see it in every photo of them walking on the moon. Almost every page is coated in moon dust and reportedly sold through a private treaties for $2 million.
But exactly who owns and who can sell this moon swag has until recently been up in the air. When astronaut Ed Mitchell put the NASA camera he used on Apollo 14 up for auction in 2011, the space agency stepped in to stop the sale.
The Justice Department became involved. No charges were made against Dr. Mitchell. And so the government went to the courts and said, I want you to establish that this camera belongs to us.
Mitchell turned over the camera used to shoot this film to the Smithsonian. But Apollo astronauts pushed back, saying there was an informal agreement allowing them to hang on to their space souvenirs. And President Obama quietly signed H.R. 4158 into law. It allows Apollo astronauts to keep and cash in on items they brought home, like this flag flown to the moon, and this personal preference kit belonging to Buzz Aldrin, and this schematic flown to the lunar surface and signed by Gene Cernan, the last man to walk on the moon.
Right now, space is the most popular collectible.
Bob Eaton auctions off space mementos.
We sold Apollo 15 Dave Scott's cuff checklist. That's what he used to drive the lunar rover.
This is really a rock and roll ride, isn't it?
That's all for almost $400,000. And then we sold another item, which was the actual hand rotation control to land the lunar module on the surface. It actually sold for over $600,000.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the International Space Station. My name is Clayton Anderson.
But the new law only benefited the famous Apollo astronauts and didn't do anything for astronauts who came later and flew on the space shuttle. Astronauts like Clayton Anderson.
Any of this stuff been up in space?
Actually, yes.
Okay.
This handrail, so you look here on the picture, you see a gold handrail. That's a similar handrail, not that one, but this was on the bottom of the lab module.
Anderson says he had to get special permission from NASA to keep the discarded handrail from the International Space Station. But with a souvenir from the joint NASA-Russian mission, he wasn't so lucky.
I had worn my Sokol suit, my Russian spacesuit, in space. So I asked through the proper channels if I could have my Sokol suit gloves, because they're custom made for my hand. And they have my initials sewn in Russian on the sleeve of the glove. I asked for my gloves only and was denied.
What do you think the gloves are now?
They could be at a flea market in Moscow. They could be used as training gloves. I have no idea. You know, I was told by a reliable source that if you came up with 10 grand, that they'd make sure my whole suit would end up on my front porch. I was told, Clay, for $10,000 American, suit be on your porch.
And then there are forgeries.
Neil Armstrong's an iconic figure. He's basically a modern-day Christopher Columbus.
Anthony Pizzatola is considered the foremost collector of Neil Armstrong autographs. He's also an expert on the difference between real Armstrong signatures and forgeries. A signed NASA picture is worth $4,500. That's a forgery on the left. Armstrong never signed over the flag on his spacesuit.
Forgeries are around simply because it's a quick dollar.
One especially lucrative stash of moon loot has landed in court. Lunar Bibles, printed on microfilm.
They were a collection of reproduced Bibles for the Apollo Prayer League, a group of people in and around the Houston community who wanted to express their support for the space program through their faith. And then they flew on Apollo 13, and Apollo 13 didn't go as planned, and there was a Houston, we have a problem, came back to Earth. And then they took a subset of those and they flew them on Apollo 14. And they went to the moon. There was rumors that they had been out on the surface of the moon. They weren't. They were packed away in what was called the personal preference kit of Edgar Mitchell. And he brought them back to Earth, and he gave them back to the Apollo Prayer League.
The founder of the league, John Stout, is now in his 90s and living in this nursing home. His collection of lunar Bibles is the center of a custody battle. Author Carol Mersch, who wrote a book about the Apollo astronauts, has 14 lunar Bibles according to court records, and the state of Texas wants them back to pay for Stout's care. Mersch is under a gag order, but told the court Stout gave her 4 lunar Bibles as gifts and 10 more to place in museums. The two sides are now in mediation. The stakes are high. Lunar Bibles have sold at auction for more than $50,000.
22.
Proof that while the flights to the moon may be over,
16.
the price of souvenirs remains in orbit. Adam May, Al Jazeera, Houston.
Remarkable. That's America Tonight. Tell us what you think at aljazeera.com/America Tonight. Talk to us on Twitter or Facebook and come back. We'll have more of America Tonight tomorrow.